what I really want to look at next is the fact that we obviously look at like an occupied country and you think, oh, well, they just gave up. That's it. It's never that simple. And Norway was definitely like a real hotbed of resistance during the war. It's a very big country, so there's a lot to. As an occupying force, you also have to consider like the amount of time, resources, manpower that needs to be put in place to even hold the territory.
Well, quite. And they solved that in France by just saying, right, well, we'll focus on just occupying the northern half, and then we'll put in a sort of puppet regime under Marshal Pétain in the Vichy South.
Yeah.
And people say, sorry, quick tangent on that. People say in the old classic, what if the Nazis had successfully invaded Britain? Where would that point be? And some people, I think Andrew Roberts, if I'm not mistaken, in his kind of counterfactual essay about it, says that it would be kind of Yorkshire would be the kind of cut off, and or rather slightly lower, and then Harrogate would be the capital of the puppet regime in the north, whereas of course it would be reversed as to how it was in France. The south would be occupied. You'd have King Edward VIII back on the throne as the sort of Nazi king, with throwing his brother in jail and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
But anyway, I digress. But it's always interesting to look at the kind of mechanics of occupation and where are those lines drawn.
Well, one thing that we are probably going to do at some point is maybe have an odd episode where we kind of theorize about like alternative history paths and how that we think that could have played out. So I think we can have endless amounts of fun on that one.
Yeah, completely. Counterfactual. I've got some. The one that always fascinates me is what if the South had won the Civil War in America?
Oh, yeah.
That one is, because there's a thing called the Golden Circle. I won't drag us down in it now, but a sort of secret society that was looking to extend slavery through Central America, forming thus a sort of golden circle of land with the kind of Gulf in the middle. And then you've got the whole myths about Confederate gold and all that kind of stuff. But counterfactuals, absolutely.
It's a good time, and there's always. I think it's when you split things off. Obviously, you have butterfly effect and so many different things, but I also think there is a certain point where you can just have endless possibilities of where things can go.
Completely.
What happens if
and
this
I think
person
it also
gets the throne sooner, or this person doesn't get in charge.
And I think it's also, because there's the old sort of the idea of history that kind of stems out of the kind of Marxist school, that everything is sort of impersonal economic forces, and that it refutes it, or it seeks to refute the quote unquote great man theory of history, whereby, well, if it wasn't Napoleon, somebody else would have filled his shoes, or if it wasn't him. And actually, I think the best refutation to that argument, that everything would have happened exactly the same and somebody else would have come along and it's nothing to do with personalities and it's all impersonal forces. The best refutation to that, I think, is counterfactuals, because as soon as you alter one little thing in even one person's life, such as a Hitler or a Napoleon or something, the whole of history changes. So you think, well, okay, if there's ever a proof of the fact that it really does come down to individuals, to personalities, to
well, it's also that things happen, they'll just happen differently, and it's like, I mean, one of the popular kind of alternate history kind of topics for, like you said, like the Soviet Union is, if like, what if Trotsky was in charge rather than Stalin?
Huge.
And how different were those kind of situations? So those kind of situations where it's it doesn't play out in the way that anyone thinks it will until you start unpacking it in a conversation and having looked through stuff. But this is very much a tangent. And we'll get back to topic.
But it's interesting, isn't it? Because the communists do say, those who kind of, you've got Trotskyites and whatnot, they do say that his version of communism was very, very different to sort of Leninist communism and Stalinist, etc., etc. So it would be fascinating to see.
We'll have a good time with that one. But yeah, so I mean,
anyway, tell us more about.
So one of the interesting things that I think, going back to that kind of the point that because Norway was, by all accounts, quite an unmanageable occupation to have. There was a very high level of resistance, both civilian and organized resistance. Obviously, the organized resistance was very much supported by the Allied powers, and there was very active coordination of attacks and raids on certain things. We obviously talked about the heavy water facilities as well. And there was very famous battles like Narvik as well was really pivotal.
Yeah.
But what I would say as well is Norway, because of the level of resistance and because of how it was, the Germans did have to put more troops in there to garrison things. They did have to have increased security around their key facilities. They had to allocate more experienced generals or strategists to the region to make sure that everything was being managed properly. And these are all things that have diverted away from the main fronts.
Yeah, completely.
So I don't for one second think that the extra forces that needed to garrison the Scandinavian countries would have made the difference on those other fronts.
But it's interesting.
But it's like, how many fires do you have to put out as a country? Like, you're trying to fight on two fronts. Again, stupid decision. But then you've also got active occupations in multiple different countries with high levels of resistance. How do you manage those at the same time with the same amount of efficiency that you need to make sure you're not being distracted too much? But it is a real story. Like, when we look at Norway as a specific example, we always kind of, again, we go back to the point of we think of occupation and you think they surrendered, they gave up. Because again, I think it's a kind of a false pretense that has been set by almost like, again, when we talk about the French, that they have a stereotype about it's always like surrendering, waving the white flag or whatever.
Yeah.
But it's not the case. The very, very staunch resistance that they put up, and it's heroic. Like there's definitely there's nothing embarrassing about any of that. But but we kind of then because that's kind of what's propagated in movies or culture. And stuff that we kind of then associate that with every other country that was occupied.
And I think just a quick thing on that. If anyone's interested in, as I hope you will be, in the occupation of France and the resistance and all the rest of it, I think it's Marcel Ophuls. I always mix them up. I think they're brothers, Max and Marcel Ophuls. I think it's Marcel Ophuls. That's Ophuls. Made this incredible film called The Sorrow and the Pity, which is like 4 hours. It's a documentary. It interviews Nazis, ex-Nazis. It interviews sort of French farmers from the resistance. It interviews collaborators. It interviews kind of everybody in the. It even interviews Anthony Eden, who shows off his sort of French, his fluency in French by he's interviewed in French and responds very fluently in French. Again, with that kind of funny, kind of upper class English twist that always sounds kind of funny when you hear someone speaking French with it. But fascinating film and really worth a watch. The Sorrow and the Pity.
Yeah,
go and check it out.